I'm Greg Sizemore, the founder and president of the Construction Users Roundtable, commonly called CURT. CURT is an organization which serves primarily the industrial owners' interests. Together, they share resources, perspectives, and experiences that help us deliver more construction for the money, better projects, safer projects, and more cost-effective projects. Along with our industry partners, we deliver our content in a series of seminars, conferences, workshops, committees, and sprint teams. If you'd like to know more about the Construction Users Roundtable, real simple, CURT or C-U-R-T, CURT.org is our website. And we would invite you to poke around there. And if you are so inclined, give us a call and we'll explore some opportunities together. You're listening to Construction Connections, powered by CURT, a series of podcasts designed to bring you contemporary information and resources and perspectives on issues that are important to all of us. I'm going to be introducing our special guest in just a moment. Before I do, however, I want to remind you we have a series of virtual topics beginning on April the 28th at 8 a.m. and continuing all day. The emphasis is on safety and on workforce. You're going to hear from a number of owners and a couple of selected trade partners, and you won't want to miss that. It's free to all of our CURT members and very small charge for those who are not CURT members. Again, if you're interested, more information is available at CURT.org. And then on June 8th in Cincinnati, we'll have an event that emphasizes the use of AI, what it is, what you need to know about it, who's using it, how effective is it, what are the watch-outs, what are the legal ramifications, what's the terminology. That's going to be a live in-person event here in Cincinnati, Ohio, very near our airport. And again, you can learn more about that at CURT.org. So we're glad that you're here today. Thank you for joining us. And now I want to introduce you to this session's guest speaker. Brian Turmail, welcome and thanks for being with us, my friend.
Greg, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, let me tell our audience a little bit about you. Brian is the Vice President of Industry and Association Image at Associated General Contractors in America. Probably one of the top 2 contractor associations in the world, but certainly in the United States. And as Vice President of Public Affairs and Workforce, Brian's role is to develop and oversee all the public member and chapter communications, marketing, fundraising, and activities for their 27,000 association members. He also oversees their market insights and their grassroots activation efforts. They also help support the association's very important workforce development effort, including advocating for career and technical education funding, immigration reform, all the other important issues that touch construction, industry, workforce. He's a member of the board of directors of their Charities Outreach, their charitable arm, and he also oversees Operation Opening Doors, a project that gets volunteer contractors to help renovate facilities that have a not-for-profit cause, primarily those focused on veterans and the disabled community. He and his wife are district residents, and he resides there in Washington, D.C. And once again, Brian, it's so good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, Brian, I want to ask you a very important question, an overarching question. If you had to describe to our listeners, viewers, the state of the construction workforce in the United States right now with no spin, what would you say about it? How would you describe it from the AGC's perspective? What do you see going on out there that demands the attention of our industry partners?
Yeah, I'd say the state of the workforce for the construction industry is, trying to pick the right word, challenged. And let me explain. One of the things we do every year is we survey our members and we ask them, what are the biggest worries? What keeps you up at night as a contractor? And every year, and this year was no exception, we released this survey in early January. 3 of the top 5 things that keep our members up at night are workforce shortages, and workforce shortages, kind of expressed in 3 different ways, but workforce shortages. And when you think about U.S. federal workforce development policy, we do because we're paid to, it's not a surprise. All right, first, let's take a look at how much money the federal government puts into workforce development for career tracks like construction. We did a research study, I guess 2 years now, when we followed federal dollars. For every dollar the federal government invests in what's now called career technical education, I knew it as vocational education, but it's now called
Mhm.
career technical education. And that includes construction, that includes manufacturing, that includes beautician, that includes becoming an EMT, not just construction. For every dollar they spend there, they spend five encouraging young adults, students to go to college, get a 4-year degree, and work in the sort of knowledge sector or the service economy, right? So, from a federal point of view, we don't actually want children, if we follow federal funding, we don't want children to go and work on a path that's going to lead them to a construction career. And then if you look at our immigration policy, which I know is very controversial, but we don't really allow people to lawfully come into this country and work in fields like construction. The number one visa program that applies to construction is a program called H-2B, the H-2B visa. Every year, the federal government starts with 60,000 H-2B visas, and then they typically up it to 120,000. Of those 120,000 H-2B visas that go out every year, roughly 6 to 12,000 go to people working construction. This is an industry that employs over 8 million people, right? So 12,000 folks is a help. Certainly it helps, but it's not going to solve most people's labor needs. You've
That's
got
right.
a bunch of other people who are working in the industry who are part of programs like temporary protected status or the Dreamers program. But both of those are under assault right now. This administration, for a variety of reasons, not all of them wrong. They're trying to end the temporary protected status for people from a number of countries, including Venezuela, Haiti, and a handful of others. And we expect at some point they'll try and end it for people from El Salvador. And that will have a real significant impact on markets where they've got a large Venezuelan or Haitian or El Salvadoran population. I live in the DC area. When we talk about the construction workforce, if they're speaking Spanish in the DC area, they're typically El Salvadoran, right? So that will be a huge detriment. So if you look at workforce policy at the federal level, we don't want to put money into encouraging our children to work in construction, and we don't want people to come in from other countries to work in construction. But we want to build a lot of things. We're investing, thankfully, record levels in infrastructure, right? We're building roads and bridges. We're investing at the federal level a lot of money in semiconductor plants. The economy is investing. I'm getting a little off task here, but I heard someone describe the amount of money spent on data centers last year was the 2025 equivalent of the amount of money spent in any given year when they were building out the interstate highway system. So we have a massive construction enterprise underway as we get ready for AI and all the data centers needed to fuel it. So we want to build a lot of things. And so we've got a lot of contractors, thankfully, who are busy, but many of them tell us that they're not bidding on projects because they don't have enough people to do the work. So if
Mhm.
you're, an owner, someone who's using construction services, what does that mean? That means because of labor shortages in this industry, you're going to get fewer bids for your projects. It's going to cost more to build them, and it's going to take longer to get them built. So maybe challenged is too nice of a word. We've got a lot of members that are desperate for people.
I think it's moved from challenge to crisis, frankly.
Yeah, I know. I don't like to use crisis because my worry as a spin guy, right, which is part of my
Yeah.
job. I just worry when people hear crisis, they think, well, everything's a crisis, and like this, they no longer distinguish. We have a crisis of crises in this country. But I'm off task. Sorry.
No, you're good. This is fabulous information. So what unintended consequences do you folks see for owners? You mentioned one,
Yeah.
and we've heard them before. It's like nobody's bidding on my $50 million project. Used to be a fairly significant piece of business, not anymore. We also hear another call that says all of our faithful contractors that we've kept busy for 20, 30 years, they've now left and gone to chase projects that are more lucrative. We also hear we are paying per diems that are unimaginable just to get folks on the project, especially in remote areas. And we're paying extra money just to get them to show up to work every 5 days. These are some of the unintended consequences of this sort of shortage. What others do you see, Brian, that the owner community needs to be aware of?
Well, I mentioned at the front end that, our members listed workforce shortages 3 different times as their top concerns.
Yeah.
One of them is workforce shortages as it relates to safety on the job site.
Yeah. I
One of the
just wrote that
things
word
that we
down.
know instinctively is that the more experience you have, the more training, the more you've been in this industry, the more you understand how to operate safely, not just for yourself, but for around others with you. So as we struggle with workforce shortages, and a good example, so you're building a brand new data center and you're building it, 50 miles from the nearest city. So a lot of contractors will tell you that most data center projects, the construction is the easy part. The real story behind that data center project is all they did to recruit the workers to get them in and train them. It's great,
Mhm.
but one of the things we worry about and our members worry about is if you have a lot of new and unexperienced people, what does that do to the job site
Well,
safety, right? So there's a huge focus on how do we make sure that someone who doesn't have much experience knows how to operate safely. So that may mean that we're slowing down project schedules because it's going to take a little bit longer to make sure, because we're going to have to pause and say, all right, whoa, you cannot operate this way. That's not safe. You got to stop and let's fix this before we move forward. So safety is a big issue. Schedule is a big issue. Let's hope that quality isn't, but certainly schedule is a big one.
yeah. And I think quality has to somehow be implicated. You can't have safety challenges and schedule challenges and training challenges without the consequent quality issues that arise, rework, etc. So we've been talking about labor shortages for years. I just mentioned to you when we were chatting before our show that years ago, a very famous organization not too far from where you are decided construction industry was not worth paying much attention to. I think they've changed their mind. But we've been talking about labor shortages for years. What do you feel, and I think you've touched on a few of these, what do you feel that we as the industry is getting wrong?
Yeah.
I've got my thoughts, but I want to hear yours, Brian.
That's a great question. And there are a lot of things. Yes, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges we do see the federal government as a big challenge, but let's take some responsibility as an industry for this challenge as
Right.
well.
That's my point of
What
the
can
question.
what can contractors do, right? And I think there are a lot of kind of low hanging fruit things that some contractors are admittedly already doing, but others aren't. And part of it is take advantage of the fact that, to use a technical term, visually, this is a cool industry. It's not a bunch of accountants with green eye shades on, crunching numbers in front of a computer all day. The
Thank
things our
God.
members build are cool. I don't know how else to put it, right? I mean, every kid played with Legos. Every kid played with those little Rector sets, right? And everyone wants to look in that hole in the fence at the job site to see what's going on. We have a very visually fascinating industry. Every contractor, every construction worker you've ever met, at least I have, has the same story where they put someone in their car and on a Saturday or Sunday, they drive them by some building they've just finished building and say, that's my airport. That's my bridge. That's my office building. We have this innate coolness with what our members do. And we have this technology that all of us have available that's right here where we can get information from all over the world via social media feeds. So yes, we have to make sure that we're not filming on, safety flaws or anything like that, but we should be taking advantage of the fact that there is an appetite on social media to see what people who work in the crafts do. Construction Talk, which is the construction channel on TikTok, last time I checked, and it's been over a year, had over 500,000 followers, right? There is an appetite to learn about what we do. People aren't getting shown construction as a pathway in school, but they're interested in it. I mean, if you just watch their social media habits, some of the most popular social media influencers are plumbers or electricians who just spend time showing people what they do. So making it easier or finding ways to channel that interest and to it doesn't cost anything to post a video to Instagram, right? Other than time. So document what you do, brag a little bit, let the younger folks on that job site, once they've figured out how to operate safely, kind of highlight what they're working on. And we can create at almost no cost a social media impression or awareness of the satisfaction that comes with working a career in construction. The other thing we can do is we should take more of a victory lap on the fact that we pay on average 18% more than the average non-farm job in the United States. These are, we all talk about the heyday of the 50s and 60s when you could graduate high school and enter the middle class. You can still graduate from high school and enter the middle class with a career in construction anywhere in this country. So we should be showing people that at that construction job site, right? I was in Cincinnati in last summer, and they're fixing up the convention center. Every
That's
pickup
right.
truck that was parked in that job site lot, those contractors, those construction workers own those pickup trucks. They're not paying a payment on them. They own them. And they own the jet skis they're towing that weekend to the lake as well. Let's show
And the
that.
lake house.
And the lake house. You're absolutely right. And also the other story that we need to do a better job telling is there's so much interest in technology in our society because it's interesting and it's fascinating, and so many people of generations younger than mine have grown up with a phone in their hand. That we need to tell the story of just how much technology permeates modern construction. Right? You go to a
Yeah.
job site, you're using GPS enabled equipment, you're using drones, you've got sort of robots walking around the job site that look like dogs. And even simple things as, a lot of dump trucks now, the driver gets out and operates a dump truck from behind when it's backing to a job site with a kind of a fanny pack remote control,
Yeah.
just to make sure no one's getting struck by that dump truck, right? Let's tell those stories. Let's show how a crane operator is using augmented reality glasses to see behind the blind spots and make sure they're not endangering people. Let's show that technology story.
Yeah, I think the technology is a big one too. And then the other thing is, and you mentioned it earlier in our talk, that's a lack of awareness. You go to these suburban high schools here in Cincinnati, wonderful high schools, great student output, a lot of college attendances, but no awareness whatsoever of what the construction industry can offer them. We've done away with shop class that perhaps you and I took. I took it. And we've done away with the other introductions to the trades and really tossed our lot toward college higher education. And the results sometimes are dismal, not given. We need our doctors, lawyers, dentists, accountants, engineers, architects, but there certainly is a lot of money. I was shocked a moment ago when you said 5-1 we spend on college higher education versus career and technical educational awareness. And that to me is shocking. I know it's difficult to move the needle there. What will it take to move the needle to make a difference? And then as you're gathering your thoughts on that, one of the things that concerns us and concerns me is every time anybody from, President Trump's administration gets on an airplane to go to foreign countries, they seem to come back with deals at multi-billion-dollar deals. And it's like, we can't build what we've got now, much less bring $1 billion every time an airplane lands at Andrews Air Force Base and brag on another $1 billion investment or construction project. What needs to happen at the federal or state level, and how can owners engage with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that, I gave you some scary statistics at the federal level. I would argue that the pendulum has already begun to swing at the local and state level. Increasingly, I spent a lot of my time professional hazard trying to find construction education programs and share their success story. Those are easier to find today in places all over the country than they were
Good.
even 5 years ago. More and more
Good to know.
communities are beginning to appreciate, because they're having, and this is kind of the answer to your second question, they're hearing from owners. They're hearing from, say, Panasonic. Panasonic wants to build a new battery plant. They'll go to the Kansas legislature and say, we would put it here, but you need to invest in workforce development so that there are people to build these projects. But, I was just thinking about not too far from you guys in Paducah, Kentucky. The superintendent of the Paducah school system wrote his doctoral thesis on the fact that career and technical education is the key for reviving Midwest Rust Belt economies. And he's putting his money where his mouth is. They've built a gold-plated construction education program right in downtown Paducah that parents want to send their children to. So what can the owner community, what can the users do to help fix our labor shortages? Everyone, you are important voices in your communities, in your state governments, and with your congressional delegation. Be heard. Let them know that you think it's important to invest in construction education and training programs, that there should be opportunities, and not just the cinder block former vehicle maintenance shop that's in the back corner by the weeds of the school district, but build nice facilities, make them a priority, right? I've seen this in suburban neighborhoods in Birmingham, Alabama. I've seen it in suburban Richmond, Virginia. San Antonio, Texas has a fantastic facility. So ask your school leaders, ask your community leaders, why aren't they investing in these programs? Ask your state officials, why aren't they keeping pace with Kansas or actually Ohio is a great example where you are. They now have requirements that schools offer career and technical education, right? So like a lot of public policy problems in this country, the solution is going to come from the local and state level and percolate up the federal government. They're always kind of last to get the big picture. So the more we can do to kind of shift that momentum and signal to federal officials that they should pay attention to what's happening back home and fix that funding imbalance we talked about, the better it will be.
That's outstanding. Now, when you peel down the demographic of the construction industry, obviously we've heard for years it's aging, doesn't seem to improve much. But the other two remarkable statistics are the number of qualified, legitimate immigrants who would like to get in and can't, or would be willing to be trained and work like crazy, but can't. That's one aspect of it, I think, that we need to pay attention to. And the second, I heard Ani Bonbasu, I think maybe it was Mark Bridgers with Continuum Consulting, but or the Continuum Group, say that the needle hasn't moved very much on women's involvement in construction. It's still around 11 to 14%. And as a little anecdote, I teach a class that has 100 graduating CEs and CMs, civil engineers, construction managers, at the universities as an adjunct. Of that 100, there are exactly 14 ladies. Again, the percentage 11 to 14 holds true even for that unscientific little sampling. What should we do to address that two-prong approach that seems like an easy button, but it just doesn't seem to get traction? Women in construction and immigration reform, which allows folks to come in, take the training, and be a wonderful contributor to a badly needed area of our business.
I'm glad you brought up women in construction because, to your point, we are never, ever going to solve construction workforce shortages if our industry doesn't figure out how to recruit from half of the U.S. workforce, period. Right?
Say that again. I want our listeners to hear that one more time, unless they were distracted as you said it. We believe it to be true. I'm glad you've endorsed it. Would you repeat that one more time, Brian, just for emphasis?
Because the construction industry is never going to solve its workforce shortage problems if it doesn't figure out how to successfully recruit from half of the U.S. workforce women. And part of it is recruiting, and an enormous part of it is retention. So when we talk, I should preface all this with, when we talk about workforce development in the construction industry, a huge part is getting people to come in and sign up for a job.
Yes.
This is not grammatically correct. And even huger part of the problem is getting them to stay. We're constantly filling a leaky bucket in this industry.
Yeah.
Not every, but many contractors I've talked to have said they hire 2 people for every spot they need to fill because they know they're going to lose one within the first 10 days. And that's a culture challenge, period. We need to figure out a way that women feel a part of and welcome and comfortable, and I'll say it, safe on a job site. And, there are many programs out there that will help you get that culture better. We have one, because it's our job to provide resources for members, called the Culture of Care, which is just a series of resources and toolkits that firms can use at the job site level to create a more welcoming environment. So they're not losing people. And so that as they attract a more diverse workforce and as they get more women in the job site, that they'll feel comfortable and they'll stay. Don't put the pinup calendar in the job site trailer to, how do you make sure that someone you've just hired isn't eating in their truck by themselves because they feel uncomfortable, but feels welcome to come sit with everyone else, right? A huge part of retention is just making sure people don't eat alone. Little things like that make a difference, that just requires a little bit of a change in how we think of those things. And then, I know you mentioned the demographic breakdown in your adjunct class. I will say that, like, when you go to a high school and you see some of these construction training programs, it's more of a 50-50 split, right? And women, men, or young women, young men. And how do we keep them from in the industry, right? And again, I think a lot of that is just culture and how do we retain them. And ultimately, you would get this if you can get a core of women who feel comfortable on the job site who go back and say, I don't know why the rest of you aren't in this job that pays me well and it's really cool. You'll get more and more. And one of the challenges for so long is physical demands of construction. Well, technology is kind of
Yes.
even the playing field. There are
Yes.
exoskeleton suits. There are other equipment so that if you're working up overhead, you've got, it looks like something from the movie Aliens. You've got a skeleton around you that lifts your arms for you. So we're
Yes.
getting there.
We are getting there, and I applaud all the hard work that AGC is doing to drive A, awareness, and B, provide resources. One of the things that we've seen here, I'll brag on Turner Construction because I know the leadership there. I knew Peter Davern real well, but they have instituted almost a zero tolerance policy when it comes to harassment on the job site, graffiti and commodes, and not even in sharing the same commode, having trailers that have really nice air conditioned, heated facilities like you and I do here at our office buildings. Nobody's got a pin up in my bathroom down the hall, or yours either. And what we don't tolerate here, we shouldn't tolerate on a job site. I think the other thing too is convenience of childcare.
Yeah.
As a flexible work schedule, children get sick, aging parents, doctor's appointments to the pediatrician, things we've got to have some flexibility. And that's a challenge. I understand, especially when there's so few resources and schedule becomes paramount. But I don't see where without those kinds of creative flexibility, you get the gals to stick around. It's
Yes.
troubling. What about immigrations and
Oh, yeah.
training?
I think to some extent it's an advocacy issue, right? Like we need to actually allow more lawful immigrants to come into the country.
Yeah.
And there are
Yeah,
two
that's right.
pieces of legislation. I just quick legislative plug, if I may. Pieces of legislation that we would encourage anyone who cares about construction and construction workforce issues to look at. One is called the Dignity Act. It's got 25 Republican and 25 Democrat co-sponsors. It's written by a congresswoman from Miami, Congresswoman Salazar. And it does two things. One, it protects the lawful status of people who are in that temporary protected status program I talked about earlier, and the Dreamers. Dreamers are children of undocumented immigrants who were born in the United States and are given the protections of U.S. citizens, right? Or actually were brought to the United States by immigrants. So not born in, but brought in the United States when they were young and are given status through the Dreamers program. It protects them, but it also provides a pathway to legal status for a group of undocumented workers in this country. Makes them legal so they can come out of the shadows. They can avoid being exploited by unscrupulous contractors or day labor brokers and actually be a legitimate part of the workforce. So Dignity Act is worth a look. And then the other one is Congressman Lloyd Smucker from Pennsylvania, who used to be a contractor, has the Essential Workforce for Economic Advancement Act, which would create a new category of workplace visa that would include construction. Now, you got to prove a few things. If there's labor shortages in your area, you got to pay everyone fair wages as we would expect. But that would be a significant, getting either one of those passed would be a significant victory for workforce issues from a policy point of view. And then, obviously, to the extent that firms are having a hard time recruiting people who are immigrants who are lawfully authorized to work in this country now, I think it goes back again to culture and content. We have a lot of firms, I'm sure you've seen this on your guys' end, who offer training and instruction and support materials in different languages, primarily Spanish, but there are parts of the country where, there are other dominant languages. Certain parts of the country, Vietnamese might be the language that you would need to offer material in. And we've even heard of firms that have they've looked at where their workforce is from. And so there's a firm in Iowa that has a large percentage of their workers who originally were born in Mexico. So they celebrate all the Mexican holidays on their work calendar too, because they appreciate the Cinco de Mayo is important, not just for people who want to drink a Corona at the local Mexican beer, but it has emotional significance to their workforce. So culture is a part of that. And then making sure that there are materials and folks they can work with who can speak their language and have resources available to them. And then the other thing is, one of the things that we've offered is we actually have on our website an immigration portal. Actually, citizenship portal. You can go to this portal. It's at workforcedoneright.org. And you go to the
Can you repeat that
portal.
site again? Brian?
workforcedoneright.org. So
Done
all three
right.
words, workforce done right together.org. Look for the citizenship portal. It'll do two things. It will allow anyone who's unsure of their lawful status to verify their status. And two, if they're qualified, it will walk them through the process of applying for U.S. citizenship. So they can actually, I've never done it. I was born here, but I've been told that the process for applying for citizenship is complicated and time
You bet it
consuming.
is.
It'll
Yeah.
hold your hand and walk you through that process. So this is
How many participants does that portal have right now? Do you know what kind of
we've
usage
got a
it's
couple
getting? And
hundred, but we'd like even more taking advantage of it, which is why I bring it up. We
thank
just
you.
got our first, it took this long. It's been up for 6 months. We just got our first construction worker made U.S. citizen through that portal. We're really
Never
excited about
despise
it.
small
And there's
beginnings,
more to
right?
come.
Yeah.
But we've made it available not just for the people who work for our members, but for their immediate family members as well. If they live under the same roof, they can use this service free of charge. Because the other part to that workforce issue is someone who's working for you isn't going to be focused and may not be physically present if they're worried that the people in their house may not be there tomorrow. Right.
Mhm.
So let's let them check their status. And if they qualify, let's let them become U.S. citizens.
Mhm.
So that's
What
that's a resource.
it is a resource. Thank you for sharing that. Question I have is, what is the status currently of the Workforce for Economic Advancement and the Dignity Act? You mentioned those two a moment ago. What is their current status? What could an interested listener do to support the advancement of those acts
Uh,
or those
as our
proposed?
I've got a colleague named Jim Young who's our lobbyist on workforce issues, who's fantastic, and he likes to talk about we're preaching to an audience of one on both those
Mm,
bills. Every member of Congress that we've talked to about the Dignity Act, about the Essential Workforce for Economic Advancement Act, has said we're ready to vote for it as soon as President Trump says he supports it. So so the answer to your question is, what can your members do? What can folks who are listening to this podcast do? First of all, ask your local congressman if he or she is a sponsor of either or both of those bills. And if not, ask them to become a sponsor. The more sponsors they have, the more likely President Trump is going to pay attention and decide, I'm going to be on the right side of right. I want to back that bill and signal to Republicans that it's okay to vote for this. And then two, to the extent there are probably some of your folks out there who have some interaction with the president. Encourage the president to support the Dignity Act and the Essential Workforce for Economic Advancement Act. These are measures that will provide an immediate boost to economic growth because you'll have more member firms bidding on projects at your folks' bill.
Now, CURT, as you probably know, we take no preferences to labor posture.
Sure.
We are equal opportunity offenders. We dance with both ladies and they both know it. And over the many years, both the ABC and the AGC have been terrific industry partners with us. But in this would be unique to you guys. What are the unions doing? Are there some creative solutions in the trades that are helping to address this? And here's the reason I say it or ask the question. I hear a lot of owners say contractors are full up. There's nobody on the bench. They're fat and sassy. They got lots of money coming in. There's no incentive for them to grow so that they can bid on our project or stay on our work. Likewise, I hear them say the union's fully employed and they got lots of money rolling in and everybody's in high cotton right now. There's no incentive there. The people who feel the pain are the owners, the stakeholders of the companies, the project owners, and ultimately the consumer when inflated construction costs begin to appear in product and service prices. So back to the question, what are your union partners doing? Are there some distinguished initiatives they're taking to help mitigate this crunch with workforce development?
Sure. I think from an international level, right? From the building trades, the carpenters, I think all
Mhm.
of them at kind of the called international, but the national level have pretty good programs about addressing culture. I think they're on board with, we don't want a job site where people are getting harassed or feeling uncomfortable. And
Right.
they're really doing a good job teaching that across the various sort of apprenticeship and in the sort of union hiring all around the country. As for improving the apprenticeship pipeline, right? Like, there are many ways to get into construction. One of them is if you're in a predominantly union market, um, you go through a registered apprenticeship program. They're both at the local level. I've seen examples where apprenticeship programs are expanding their capacity, and they are doing a better job getting recruiters who reflect and are come from the communities they're trying to recruit from. It's up in Columbus just
Hmm.
a couple of years ago. They've got I want to say it was a Carpenter's Hall. And if I've got that wrong, my apologies to all people involved. I just forget more than I remember these days. But I think it was a carpenter's training facility at Columbus where they had programs going in Spanish, and they were doing a great job. And I know our members in that area were really excited about it. We see parts of the country where all the different trades have gotten together and made it a little bit easier to apply to get into a registered apprenticeship program. More and more, I'm hearing about like a common app. Like there's a common app to apply for college. That all the
Sure.
different trades have gotten together in a local market, and all you need to do is fill out one app, and that gets you your application in to all the different apprenticeship programs in that market.
Creative.
It is creative.
Very creative.
At the end, look, about a third of our members work exclusively with or primarily with union labor.
Right.
And ultimately, what the unions are offering is high quality talent because they believe, and we don't disagree with them, that a apprenticeship training program is the gold standard for construction training. And
Agreed.
two, that they're going to provide workers when their signatories call them up, say they need workers, right? They're doing a good job on the training. And in a lot of local markets, they're doing a better job in expanding capacity, trying to meet that need. But, look, and again, I don't speak for the unions. They don't pay me to speak for them. But my sense is that they have a similar challenge that most construction training programs have, which is if we're struggling to find workers, think of how hard it is to find teachers, right? Because you need the
Yes.
same set of skills. But
Yes.
most teaching programs pay less than a construction job. So,
Yes.
many of these training programs, the folks doing the training, they've seen many winners. And, so how do we get a younger sort of cadre of training instructors in the apprenticeship programs and in our high schools?
Right.
That's certainly one challenge.
It certainly is. Have there been any other creative collaborations in addition to your union, your signatory contractors working with their union folks? Are you aware of any other pretty effective collaborations that AGC has undertaken, or anybody else for that matter?
Sure. Yeah. I would say that, just to stick with the union theme for a second and then to go out a little further, one of the things that we've seen is out of Wisconsin, and maybe they do it elsewhere. I saw it in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
that we have member firms and the local trades team up. And you know how you do like a signing day for sports events?
Yes.
So-and-so's going to play for the Reds. Well,
Yes.
here they've got so-and-so who's graduating from the local high school CTE program is going to go be a laborer. And then, and so they'll put on like the bolt construction hat and the laborer hat, and at the same ceremony, someone else is going to sign up to be a carpenter. And at the same ceremony, someone's going to be a pipe fitter or whatever. So you see those kinds of collaborations. More broadly, do you see a lot of collaborations? Yes. I see where I see a lot of collaboration is between our chapters or member firms, for example, and community colleges. Up in Maine, our chapter there is partnered with the local community colleges to provide kind of an open shop registered apprenticeship program where you could sponsor an employee as a member firm, and they'll go to that community college and go to the AGC Maine registered apprenticeship training program, right? Even if it's not affiliated with the union. And other places, you've got member companies like Sunt Construction that worked with Central Arizona College to create a kind of a bespoke construction training and education program that's available for any student, whether they're going to end up working at Sun or not. But to add to the incentive, Sun says if you're in that program and you have a B, or maybe it's a B minus average or above, you're automatically guaranteed a summer internship with us, right? So they're putting their money where their mouth is in terms of.
Yeah.
So you see that more and more where there are interesting partnerships between member firms and community colleges or community service organizations, all trying to do the same thing, which is recruit, train, prepare, and support workers. Another one, they had some city funding for this when they were building the new Kansas City airport, which is a beautiful facility, much better than the old terminal, which was a nightmare. The city wanted to make sure that the project was an opportunity to bring a lot of people in who had traditionally been underrepresented, particularly Black Americans, into the construction project. So they funded retention officers on the job site. So people would call up. So someone didn't show up for the day. They'd call up and say, "Where are you?" "Oh, my car broke down." "Oh, well, let's get you an Uber and get you out here." Or "Let's get your car fixed." Or "Why aren't you making it on time?" "Well, I don't have a car and transit doesn't operate that early." "Oh, well, let's figure out a low interest loan we can get you to get a car. Or we can see if we can carpool you with someone else." Just those little things are, it's not rocket science, but it made a difference. And they were able to retain a far higher percentage of the people that they had kind of targeted to recruit than if they hadn't had that support in place.
Other than the female demographic, why do you think most people leave our industry, especially the field personnel?
Well, that's a good question. You know, to some extent, if you're looking at like middle management, like the project supervisors, the guys, the men and women who spend some of their time in the trailer, some of their time in a job site, it's a tough job. The hours are
It is.
long and they
Yeah.
spend a lot of time traveling, right? If
Yeah.
you work for, particularly if you work for a larger firm or a regional player, you might be spending a month, 6 months, 8 months in Denver, and then you're in Wichita, and then you're in Dallas. And if you're trying to start a family, that's hard.
Impossible.
I don't know how it is for most people, but the more I'm away from Mrs. Turmail, the more I'm in trouble with Mrs. Turmail. And my sense is that's the same for a lot of other folks. So we have a
I
lot of
would
firms that
agree.
spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do we reduce that stress of those early years. Can we make the hours a little better? Can we pay to have the family come visit those employees on a regular basis? Some firms even send flowers to the families every couple of weeks saying, "Hey, we know you're going through a hardship. It's a little token of our appreciation." So little things like that. So I think finding ways to mitigate stress. You mentioned it earlier. Flexibility in the job schedule is kind of the toughest nut to crack, but an important one.
Yes.
If you're raising a family, you're going to get a phone call at some point in your life saying your kid says they're sick. You need to come pick them up.
Right.
We
Right.
have to find a way to accommodate that because that is just a fact of life.
Right.
And not just because if you had a kid who liked to pretend they were sick, but some kids get sick. Like that happens. Like,
Yeah.
so how do you figure that out? Or how do you figure out
Aging
that some
parents is
employees,
another one.
what's that?
Aging parents is another challenge.
Absolutely. Or, one of the things we haven't touched on is a lot of our members are looking at how can they bring in the term varies by community. In DC, they call them returning citizens. Other places are called criminal justice involved citizens, people coming out of the prison systems.
Yes.
How do we get them
Nonviolent
involved?
offenders.
Yes, exactly. How do we get them involved? How do we reduce recidivism, number of people going back into jail after they've been released? Construction's a great pathway to do that. But we've got some firms that allow those individuals to meet with their parole officers in the job site trailer. So they're not gone for 4 hours a day. I mean, so we can be flexible and find a way to meet people with their life needs while meeting our workforce needs.
That is terrific. Let me touch on a slightly more sensitive subject that
Yeah.
touches the workforce, and it's really come to light in the last couple of years, I think, and that is mental wellness of
Oh,
our workers as part of the retention program. Suicide prevention is the harsh term. Mental wellness is the goal. What are you seeing relative to those areas, Brian, that are being effective? They're always kind of wrapped up in a safety initiative because of the impact on the job site, for those that are afflicted by those challenges. Talk to us about what you're doing at AGC or what you've seen some of your key chapters do in order to address that issue.
yeah, no, and you're right. It is. I said earlier, I don't like to use the word crisis. I think we have a mental health crisis in the construction industry.
I would
We have a
agree.
suicide rate that's way higher than the national average. We have opioid addiction and alcohol addiction rates that are higher than the average. All those are symptoms of the fact that we've got a mental health problem in this industry. We've identified that I think one of the biggest problems is we have a culture, particularly in construction, but I don't think it's unique to construction, that doesn't know how to deal with mental health. if you broke your leg on a job site, I'm pretty sure someone would say, hey, let's get you to the hospital and get you fixed. But if you're showing signs of a mental health problem, we kind of have this culture in this country of, I'm just going to pretend it's not there. Right. Or I'm going to put a little flyer in the person's next paycheck saying, you should call these folks. Right. But we don't feel comfortable saying, I see you're hurting. Let's talk and figure out how we can get you
Yeah.
help. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Especially
we've
among the
actually,
men, there's this concept of give me my way, get out of my way. I got this, man up, big boys don't cry type thing. And I think that it's really the stronger person that says, I have a deficit. This is the area of the deficit. I need resources and help in order to improve this issue. I think that takes a bigger person, frankly, but you're right. Culturally, we're not there yet.
we've launched a class that's available. Members can take it for free. How to identify signs of mental health problems and how to talk about it. Because no one knows. We're not taught that.
That's right.
I've been managing people for decades now because I'm getting older, and I don't know what to do if someone feels like they're having a mental challenge. And that weighs on me, which is why we've been taking the class as well. That's one resource that's available. And I think that this industry, the good news is this industry increasingly recognizes as a problem. One of the big, we're getting close to it, the big safety initiatives for this industry is construction safety, which begins in early May. It's originally organized by some of our larger member firms, and it's an industry-led initiative to spend a week just every day. Let's do a safety stand down. Let's focus on some element of construction safety. The last couple of years, they've been heavily focused on mental health safety, and that's both a sign of practically solving the problem and a signal that their firms are getting it. And I've talked to a lot of folks who run training programs at member firms, say that we're training our frontline managers to be mental health support as well, to ask people how they're doing, not just on their job, but how's the family life going? How's everything for you? Right. And then, we also have to look at physical safety, because the pipeline to mental health problems is you get injured on the job site, you get addicted to opioids, which leads to your life falling apart, which leads to a mental health crisis, right? That's one reason people have mental health problems, but that's a pretty common route in our industry. So it goes back to this kind of total safety and health environment. How do we make sure, hold on. I'm sorry. I had a phone call interrupt there. How do we make sure we think about safety, physical safety and mental safety as part of one whole process?
That is absolutely true. One of the questions here that we had sent is, one hard truth about our industry that needs to be said out loud if we're serious about fixing it, and you just did that. And that is mental wellness. And most specifically, it's one thing, workplace, stress and the physical implications and loneliness and being away from the house, but suicide takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Self-harm, making the irreversible decision. And as you mentioned, it's astounding. It's one of the number one causes of death in the construction industry these days is suicide. So hats off to AGC and the others who are at least starting a conversation and trying to provide resources to address this.
Just to sort of put a cap on it, one of the our glib lines about workforce shortages is that mamas don't want their babies to grow up to be construction workers. To put it more serious, mamas are never going to want their babies to be construction workers if they think they're sending their baby into an industry where they're more likely to commit suicide than some other industry. So
think of that.
They're related.
Think of that.
Yeah.
Think of that. Yeah. Pretty incredible. We've got just a few minutes left, but let me touch a little bit on technology and AI. A lot of the narrative, we're trying to change it to augmented intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. The names vary, and I think augmented with the human capability to manage it's probably a better, more palatable description of it. How is it changing the industry from your point of view? I know it's the Wild West out there. Everybody's headed to the gold rush or the land grab, like the 1840s. What are you seeing from your perspective, Brian?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first wave of changes in the way construction firms operate that's coming about because of AI, or kind of those back office or those front office operations. AI is a tool that people can use to create more accurate estimates, to kind of to do a better job for preparing contract documents. Or AI is a tool that can help folks do all that pre-construction work and clash detection a lot more efficiently and a lot more quickly. But
Hmm.
the exciting part for AI is, first of all, its ability, now that you're running drones and you've got sort of cameras going, you can actually use AI to go through thousands of hours of drone footage and identify safety problems on a job site,
Think of that.
or track progress. Or you can look at ultimately in an environment not too far away when everyone's wearing some kind of a wearable connected device. You can use AI to flag, oh my gosh, like we're doing something that causes people's heart rates to spike. We need to think about a new way to have them do that. And then where it gets really exciting in the future is when AI starts to enable autonomous or semi-autonomous pieces of construction equipment to work in an ever-changing environment, right? Like if you look at a factory today compared to like when Laverne and Shirley were working in that brewery in the 50s and 60s, it's a very different environment, right? The
Yeah.
computers and the robots are doing all the assembly, the humans are making sure everything's working right. If you look at a construction job site today, yeah, there are changes. The helmet's different, the PPE is different, the construction equipment is different, but it's still very much a labor intensive activity where humans are
Indeed.
doing the bulk of the physical work.
Right.
If AI heads in the direction we think it is, there's an environment where the humans on a job site are managing the equipment and the tools more so than doing the physical labor. Doesn't change
Yeah.
our workforce needs or number of people we need. It changes the type of people we need, and it changes how projects are built, right? And there's a
Yeah.
there's a there's a construction VC fund that we've talked to a few times that talks about, if you want to see the future of construction, go to where they're building things in the most extreme environments you can think of. Outer space, Antarctica, you know, the harshest regions in the world. And there you already see machines are building structures, right? So how do AI enables that to happen? We never modernized our construction projects in the way the factories did because the robots couldn't acclimate to an ever-changing environment. But AI is kind of the tool that gets you there. So a lot of potential. The other flip side of AI is it's driving an enormous amount of demand for construction because so many of our members are involved in data center construction, and
Data centers.
you
Yeah.
can make an argument that that's keeping the industry. That's the difference between the industry shrinking and growing in 2026.
Wow. That's a pretty tall statement there. What do you think are the unique needs of data center owners when it comes to construction activity? Building a center, what is unique to the data center space that we may not be familiar with in more traditional consumer non-durables, automotives, petrochemical? What do you see there? It's a little bit more of a technical question, less of a workforce one, but I'd be interested in your comments on point.
Time, power, electricians.
Hmm.
Every construction project that we know of is under time constraints, but those constraints are X times more significant for a data center project. Every data center developer, whether it's Meta or Google as the owner, or whether it's a speculative data center being built by a third party developer who wants to sell that data center capacity to a technology company, every one of them wants to get it built as quickly as possible. As you mentioned earlier, they're paying an enormous premium to attract labor to get them built on schedule.
Yeah.
Electricians. I mean, most of these data centers are preformed concrete walls that you prop up. The challenging work is all of the electrical that goes into both the data systems, but the enormous amount of cooling and power redundancy systems that go in any data center, right? Every data center's got a bank of batteries to keep the data
Yes.
center running for the 10 seconds it takes for the diesel generators that are also installed in the data center to kick in, right? Because any second lost in a data center is millions in lost transactions or cloud revenue for a technology company. So they need an enormous amount of electricians and then time. And then the other thing that's a challenge that's beyond the construction industry is data centers need a lot of power. And I
Hmm.
mean, I think this is why you see a growing community pushback to data centers, is because there's the people in their minds have connected rising power bills to data centers. And this
Yes.
is why you see data centers getting built in increasingly rural areas because the power is available there. right? And it used to be that you were building them all in, Ashburn, Virginia, or the Silicon Valley. Now they're being built wherever you can find power that's available.
Land, yeah, and power. Yeah,
Land and power. Yeah, we got a lot of land,
land and
but
power.
power is the challenge. And we think that that's going to lead to the next construction boom, which is power construction. Last
Yeah,
year,
interesting.
spending on data centers increased 30%. Spending on power facilities increased only 2%. That's lagging.
Ooh,
We're going to see a big
yeah,
spike in power construction, or we're going to stop building data centers. We'd rather the former than the latter.
yeah. We won't stop building data centers. The
Yep.
industry is going to demand it.
Yep.
Folks, we've been listening to Brian Turmail. It's been a fascinating, intriguing conversation with you, Brian. Brian's the Vice President of Industry and Association Image at a wonderful partner with the Construction Users Roundtable, the Associated General Contractors of America, commonly called AGC. And Brian, if they want more information on anything that they've heard, the website and everything can be, just go ahead and repeat where they could most quickly get information from anything we've talked
The
about.
best place to go is we have one central website, which will link you to all of our other resources, agc.org. AGC is an Associated General Contractors.org. And on there is all of our contact information. So they've heard me, and to the extent that they want to hear any more of me, my contact info is on there. I'm happy to chat with them and get them whatever they need.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian, and all the very best to our friends at AGC of America. And you've been listening to Construction Connection, powered by CURT. We've been excited to have this episode featuring Brian Turmail, Vice President of Industry and Association Images at AGC. We'll catch you next time, right here on Construction Connection, powered by CURT. Thank you.